thing we usually beat you up on,
Right.
the future projections for population. Last year's plan had a low of 22,918 in the 22-23 school year. This plan has a low of 23,856 in that same year. So where did we get the extra 1,000 kids?
The difficult thing with last year's projections were the nature in which they were done. Last year's projections were done totally different than the other projection years because of they were done during the Boundary Adjustment Committee process. And we used geocoded students for, instead of actual enrollments based on just the numbers reported from the school, we actually used the geocoded student locations and the new boundaries that were created. Essentially, the projections are based on a history and projecting that history forward. When the Board of Ed moved boundaries when they closed schools, there was no history anymore for school boundaries for certain schools. And to be able to basically do the boundary adjustment process with the committee, to be able to draw a line and say how many students are there now, move the line, say how many now, we had to use geocoded student locations which don't consider all of the out-of-district placements that we have. So a typical school like Hampstead Elementary, the enrollment might be 363. 100 of those kids don't live in the district. They're out of districts that are teachers' kids or just out. They're at a daycare that. But there might be 80 kids that leave Hampstead and go to other various schools. When we did it for the Boundary Adjustment Committee, we just did. If you lived in that boundary, we enrolled you at that school because that's where you should have gone. But that wasn't the actual.
How does that change the total for the county, though? Are
Well,
the kids from outside of Carroll County that are now going to school in?
There are a number of kids that are outside of the county that attend Carroll County schools.
1,000 new kids?
There's not 1,000, but that's a projected. If you really want to know, I can give you a presentation on it. I did it for the board, but it's not something I can explain in like 2 minutes because it's very.
But it wasn't based on changes in projected county housing growth or birth rates?
It's really based on the methodology that was done for that process versus the methodology that is typically used.
So are you going to be using this methodology from now on?
Yeah, unless we're asked again to do what we did during that year-long process, where we did the Boundary Adjustment Committee. I had to do projections for each iteration of different studies. So the projections that were used in last year's master plan were the projections that were included in the Boundary Adjustment school closure report, which wasn't done. And the board and the superintendent made that decision to use those instead of creating another set of projections and having multiple projections out there that the public would say, well, wait a minute, this one says one thing and the one you use to close schools says another. Unless they direct us to do that again, this is the process that we've used for 20, 30 years, and we'll always use this cohort survival methodology based on actual enrollments, actual historical survival ratios. If they direct us to do that again, I can't say it'll never happen, but there's no plans at this point to do it. So.
Anybody else? Okay.